for such a long time, uh, content made for gamers wasn't necessarily made by gamers, right?
I'm delighted to have with me today the creators of the awesome Netflix show Arcane, Christian Link and Alex Yee. Just want to start us off by a more general question. How do you guys reflect on the reception to Arcane? I mean, I've personally watched it, loved the show, and I think I'm fair in saying that it's been overwhelmingly positive reception from both fans and people new to the franchise of League of Legends. So how do you guys personally reflect on that positive reception?
I mean, it was a long project. I think it was many tests, for, hey, like, did we make the right decisions? Is this a story that people will be as passionate about as we have been? There has been the video game curse looming over our heads as well, so I think it was a huge milestone. Obviously, I think we all hope on our team that there's going to be much more, like Arcane in the future, and more opportunities for video game franchises and IPs to just go deeper on their stories. And so I think that was really important that we get this right, to even imagine a future in this format, so yeah, it was, I think, just really important, and a huge relief too, because so much work went into it.
Yeah, I mean, it's overwhelming and uplifting. I mean, there are so many details and so many like little pieces of love that have been added to the project by so many different people who worked on it. And for me, it's incredibly gratifying when you go online and you see everyone attaching to a different part of the show, and then everyone just finding all these little details, right, and calling them out. The fact that people can recognize, I guess, all that love is just, I don't know, it's really fulfilling.
Yeah, I bet. And I imagine you guys, it's a nice, proud moment for you. And you mentioned something there, Christian, that I kind of want to ask a little bit further about, which is that, you felt like this was important as a moment in just gaming because, it is true that games to screen adaptations don't often do amazingly. So was that something that you felt as a games fan, you really wanted to emphasize and really help this kind of become a more common thing?
I think for a lot of us, like, we've been with these, characters and these IPs that we've loved, from games for I don't know, I mean, decades, in some cases. And, I'm sure we all know the experience, what it's like when you're trying to tell, your family or your friends, like, what it is that you love about League or any other games that you love, and they can never really quite understand. And I think it's been amazing to hear that Arcane has been an opportunity for a lot of people to finally do that, to have something where you can point, someone to and say, hey, like, this is why, which is really, really cool to hear, because I think that was really the goal, is to find an expression of the IP that really feels like it's also made for, ourselves, if you will. It was a big question in the beginning, like, how much do you lean into, like, well, that's, how you got to do it, and I don't know, the Hollywood textbook, versus just kind of trusting our own gut and not always knowing the answers, but just being really self-aware about having to find them in the process. Working with Fortiche, a studio that hadn't done anything of that scale, we certainly hadn't. So I think, if anything, I think it was just a big commitment toward just following our own, like, what's the thing that we really want to exist.
Yeah, I mean, it's for such a long time, content made for gamers wasn't necessarily made by gamers, right? And I think what's great is we're coming into this period of time where we're getting older, and so the people who can, make these shows and these movies can be people who grew up, loving these properties. And so I think for us it was really just we want to be part of that movement, but I tend to think we're going to see a lot of good game content coming up in the future. And, I think as a gamer, it's really fulfilling, I think like you said, we've experienced the disappointment, right? And you just want the world to get more rich and more engaging as you see it go across different media. So I think that was really the goal for us. I think part of the reason it got to the point that it was that we kind of were working on it in secret for a little bit, and it was just sort of like we got to spend a lot of time thinking about just, everything we'd want to see, I guess, in a show. And And honestly, at the time, we really didn't know where it would wind up. We just knew we wanted something that felt like a good realization of our characters actually in the world. And so, for a long time, it was just kind of us throwing ideas against a wall in a room together. And then we sort of slowly started bringing other people in, and eventually got to this point where, we're like, okay, well, now we're getting to this point where we have to figure out how to turn this into a TV show. And that's where we started bringing people in to, I don't know, just give us the benefit of their experience working in film and TV. And, you hear there's a lot of good advice, but there's also a lot of rules that I think are rules because they've been rules for such a long time. So, we spent a fair amount of time just sort of figuring out which things were shortcuts that would help us to not reinvent every wheel, and which things were places where we wanted to try something different.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's an important question because there's so much that you run into when you start something like this. I mean, essentially the question of like, who's this for? It was always a big question. Do you want to make this something more for the general audience versus our audience? The way I think about it is that we live in this very, very interesting time, right, where games suddenly are something that everyone kind of looks to and pays attention to, and it's suddenly not just the nerds in the basement, but like it actually shapes today's culture, mainstream culture. And so I think the best thing we could have done and tried to do was really stick to what this, why we love the IP and what this is all about in terms of for us, for league players, for people who just really want to know some of these questions about these characters in the worlds. Not just saying, hey, this is something where we bend over backwards, to make something that just kind of works for everybody, but really also stay true to what, like the nerd stuff that we like about this. So, and there were these things from the beginning, the fact that we ended up with like 40-minute episodes, it was like, oh my God, you can't do 40-minute episodes. It needs to be an hour, or whatever, your 23 or 30-minute thing. And we were just like, why not? And it was just this, a lot of these things around, it can't be done. And, there's a million other things. There really isn't one way how people build a season, and how you structure your season. All these things was just stuff where, I don't know, it's trial and error, but also just trying to be really, really aware of like where you're approaching something that's just not going to work, and then pivoting really, really fast,
Yeah, and it's great to hear there's kind of like a passion project come to life. And that thing that you mentioned there, is that one of the benefits of, this kind of being a relatively new frontier, is that you get to experiment a bit more and kind of break the rules a bit more?
Yeah, I mean, what we started was like every professional that we went to that worked in the film and TV industry was just like shocked. It was like, you're doing what? Like no one wants to see this in animation. You don't do these drawn out, like CG animation. You don't do these drawn out scenes. It needs to be quick. It needs to be just action, and all these things. Where we went, well, we kind of want this to exist. I think there were some people who just got it, who understood why we want this to exist, and I think those were the folks we try to surround ourselves with.
I mean, I do think this is a question for which working at Riot, definitely helped us, because Riot, as a company, Riot challenged a lot of conventions. Like free to play wasn't really a big thing. Esports wasn't big in the West, and at so many different points, the leaders at Riot faced kind of the similar criticism from the popular industry, right? Saying like, this is never going to work, or this, this isn't how things are done. So they were pretty receptive to us saying, we want to do something new. And I think everyone at the company has always wanted to find the best way to, deliver the cinematic experience of the champions, because obviously, these are characters that players have loved for such a long time, and there's so much story behind the game. So, we were always looking for the right way to get it out there. I remember a piece of feedback that we got kind of early on that was like, this story doesn't justify being animated, because it wasn't like, we didn't have crazy high octane anime battles and things like that, which it felt like you had to do something like that if you were going to go animated, because if it was going to be grounded, then just go live action. I think So one thing that happens when you translate, like a video game or something else to live action is the actor sort of absorbs the character in a way, right? Like it's like Christopher Reeves becomes Superman, whereas with animation, the actor adds to the character, right? And so to me, it's like that character sort of retains their unique identity as opposed to sort of like being glommed onto like a real person. And then like I think for like we wanted a bit of a larger than life capability for the characters, and we wanted this vibrant world, and we wanted the capability to be able to have fights that would be almost impossible to pull off in live action. And so to me, like it's kind of like animation is a no-brainer. I can definitely think of certain adaptations of games where it's like you look at the world and you're like, it doesn't really feel like the way I would imagine that world. And I can tell that that's either because you were dealing with the restraints of reality or a budget or something like that. And so, I think at least when you have a studio like Fortiche with such amazing artists, it's like you can draw something that you could never build, and so that to me was a really strong argument in favor of animation. I always felt like we were making a show for us, and so we didn't have to do this translation of saying like, who is a player in League of Legends? How can I reverse their psychology and then make a show that fits that? And to me, I felt that when I would watch, the video game like shows or movies that didn't click for me, where I'm like, they're trying to figure me out and I can tell, it was, I mean, one of the things that was a conversation for us really early on with League was, people are saying, what kind of age person is this for, and League is, this game for kids. They're like, 14 to 22 or, whatever their, the demographics that they pull are. And, my response is like, true. But at the same time, I played League when it came out. It's a 10-year-old game, right? So there's some of us who may not still play League, but really engaged with it for a long time and still want to see, the stories of these characters. So we kind of landed, I guess, on this sort of, this young adult, this sort of transitioning, kind of feeling, and something that, I think hopefully kids could look up to and enjoy, right? And those of us who are, I guess, getting longer in the tooth could still, appreciate.
Did that add a lot of pressure as well? Being fans of the game, taking the things that you love and your fellow players love, and then bringing that to screen. Was there a lot of consideration in your mind about, well, I can't do this with Vi, or I can't do this with Caitlyn, and how will people react if we do this?
Yeah, I mean, constantly, like for every, there are a lot of, I would say, like gameplay meta things also we try to really bring into the show, how just characters react, like every Vi player will know you go in first and you die first, and when you go in, there's no way out. And so, even just thinking about that, which is taking that into the, into the show and into fight scenes, with Vi and how she makes decisions and that kind of stuff. Yeah, I mean, certainly we're scared shitless.
I think we actually trusted ourselves for a lot of the big things. It's just when you get into the, like where champions do things other than, I guess, the kind of things that feel obvious, or where you're adding dimension to a character or trying out some different quirk, those are the things where you really check yourself and like, I think it'll work. I hope it'll work. I remember, and sometimes it's the silliest things, right? Like one of the examples is in the pilot, right? When they're picking the lock on Jace's apartment, and Vi kicks the door open. I'm like, are they going to be okay that she kicks the door open? I don't know. Like she's using her foot, not her fist. I don't know. This might be breaking everything, but it's, so many of these things you look back on in retrospect, and it's, they're not nearly as big of a deal when you're going through the experience of watching the show as making it.
Yeah.
It was definitely, I think, a goal for us to sort of show you two sides of everything, right? Like it really felt like, the story is the two sides of this city, and how, they're inverse in so many ways, and yet they're sort of quintessentially linked. And so, to me, so much of the exploration of the different characters was, the finding the good in bad and the bad in good, right? And really finding, I guess, the questions that each character would have to ask themselves really feel like you're testing, I guess, whatever your core values are, your core beliefs. And also, for me personally, I really wanted to get to a point where people would argue about who their favorite character is, like it would never be a thing where it's just like, oh, clearly this is the good one, or clearly this person's right. Like I want the arguments in the same way that you would have the arguments in League, right, about which champion is the best. That's what, I don't know. It just feels like League to me.
Yeah, I mean, it was the best outcome, right? Afterwards, when whatever, Reddit or wherever you go, and people are like, Jay sucks, and someone else will go on, and just be like, wait a minute, like, here's what he actually did. Is that really so bad? I think that was kind of the goal, because it's all arguable. They're all making decisions and that are hard, and I think that's I think the best storytelling is when stuff's hard.
I noticed one thing you guys avoided was, over the top examples of a character using their in-game move, right? Like, oh, I'm gonna do the super punch now, everyone, like, prepare for it. Was that like a very conscious decision to avoid something like that?
Yeah, we had sort of like it was not like a written out rule or anything, but to me it was kind of an informal rule of thumb that anything that felt like it was an Easter egg from the game needed to not come at the expense of the viewing experience for someone who knows nothing. So and I think actually Fortiche did a really good job with a lot of these things, where there's just so many little hints buried in the backgrounds, and of both nods to the game and also nods to deeper story, for the characters in Arcane, that if you're really engaged, right, or if you're someone who does have that full knowledge, it's a delight for you. But if you're someone who has no idea, you're just like, sure, no, everything makes sense, in what I'm watching right now.
There's a good question here about fan content. I know there's been plenty of it. Is there any that you particularly enjoyed or perhaps taken note of, or are you trying to steer away from, the fan interpretations of your work?
There's definitely just a lot of really genius stuff, and just really fun. Like it just kind of shows that if you create a dynamic for characters where people are inspired by a lot of things, it's really cool to see. It's just really awesome to see.
I mean, there's so much content, that's just, I mean, every bit of it fuels us, so to me, it's like calling out anyone feels like it's doing a disservice to the others, because we see so much of it, and we really appreciate it.
Yeah, I will say there's some stuff even where you see it and you're like, that is kind of also what we're doing in season 2. And people are freaking out, like, oh my God, can we still do it? It's gonna feel like we copied it, because it was like, oh, relax, relax. We just got to stick to what we wanted to do in the first place. But it just goes to show, I mean, it's just so much inspiration, for the backstories and for, I don't know, just all the different angles on the characters and where things could go. So yeah, it's been a huge inspiration.
Well, now you've told them that if they scrape all of the content that's made for Arcane, they're going to have some of the spoilers for season 2.
Yes, good luck. There's only roughly 15 million gazillion fan art pieces. So yes.
Good luck finding that needle in the haystack. What can you tell us about season 2? What can we expect from the gang? Can you give us any insight into what we can expect the focus to be on?
Well, everyone dies in the first 5 minutes.
Oh, thanks. Great.
No, I mean, it was exciting to it was exciting to get into it because of how much the ending of season 1 just turns everything upside down for every character. It's just been really fun to explore these new colors for all the characters. Don't want to say too much, but we're having fun. The cool thing is also that a lot of the things you've learned in season 1 are really, now you feel a lot more comfortable just kind of, exploring things, how we use music, like how we, editing, how that can be just such a creative tool. So yeah, I guess, I'm really not giving you anything. I apologize, but I'm sure you expected that anyway. So yes.
I have to ask my final question, which I know that if I don't, fans will slaughter me. I will mindful of you. I won't just straight up ask when are Vi and Kate gonna get together, but what can we expect from that particular relationship in season 2?
So, all right, I think I can figure out how to answer this question with the correct degree of vagueness. We have always wanted to tell an organic story about Caitlin and Vi that feels like it's really true to how we see them, you know, and how they've been seen. And the way in which we wanted to roll that story out has always been sort of determined. So what you will see in season 2 will be part of the big picture that we've had for all along.
Wow.
I mean, how much more do you want to give?
No, I don't know. I mean, I mean, yeah, I wouldn't know how else to put it without really spoiling anything. I don't know. I mean, it's
it goes as far as it can, considering they both die in the first 5 minutes of season 2. But
there you go.
You know, I mean,
yep,
we do the best.